everybody, and welcome to A Case of the Jills. I'm sure it's the case with almost every single person who's ever done a video on YouTube that you film a whole video or a whole portion of a video and for some reason it just does not happen to show up on your SD card. That's what's happened to me this week. So at the beginning of the week, I filmed a whole video. I have most of it, but this beginning part I had to redo. So you're gonna see me like this, and then you're gonna see me in a completely different outfit, and it's because it's 2 different days and I screwed up. Looking back over my history as an endurance athlete, I realized that there are a lot of behaviors and activities and thought processes that I would not repeat. Some of these things are things that, if left unchecked, could lead a person down the path of overtraining syndrome. It's easy for us to say I ended up with OTS because I train too much. Yes, that is the surface problem, but I find it's really important to unpack a lot of the underlying things in order that we can see these things happening in our own lives and take action before they get out of control. So today I'm unpacking some of the specific behaviors and thought processes that could be problematic if left unchecked. These are things that I have done in some cases, and they're things that some of my clients have done, the athletes that I've spoken to, people I've trained with over the years. These things can accelerate an already unhealthy relationship with exercise, or they can start new unhealthy relationships. I promise you I will call myself out when it becomes necessary. I will let you know the things that I did wrong, which leads us to our first mistake, not periodizing training. Periodization of training is a natural and necessary practice. It is something that we have to do. Every sport has different cycles of training up, performance, and then recovering. This can happen on a macro cycle, meaning it can be over a calendar year, especially if you live in a place where there are seasons. This usually looks like this. You have most of your races in the summer, so in the springtime, you're kind of ramping up your training, and then in the fall, you start winding down, maybe like October, November, and then into the winter, it's a lot of couch and chill. You can also have kind of microcycles along the year if you find that, let's say, if you're a university athlete or for whatever other reason, you have races peppered along the year. This means you'll be training up, racing, and then recovering on smaller cycles throughout the year. This makes sense, right? You build up, you chill. But guess what? I did not do this. I really thought that it was necessary for me to be marathon ready 12 months out of the year. What an idiot I was, honestly. This is so much ego. It's ego. Has nothing to do with talent, has nothing to do with running ability. It's all about a person who is too afraid to let go of a certain amount of what they think of as fitness in order to recover and actually get their body healthier. Don't make this mistake. If you feel that you cannot be trusted with periodizing your own training, get a coach. If you can't afford a coach, get an accountability partner, another training partner who understands what it is that you're trying to do and helps you stick to the plan. There are 1,000,001 resources on the internet, there's books, there's websites where you can understand more about periodization, find a plan that fits for you, but if you think you can continue the year at a high pace and never chill out, overtraining could be a possibility in your future. All right, I think I did it. And now we're on to the old footage. Oh, one more thing I wanted to say about the old footage. When I shot the other part of this video, I was having kind of a moment, you know? I was having one of those days where I was feeling a little bit sad. So you're gonna see me get a little bit emotional at one point. You know, I'm not gonna censor myself. I want you guys to know me and know what I'm all about. You know, I'm honest with you all the time and I give you things kind of as I really am. So I hope that doesn't bother you too much, but I just wanted to give you the heads up that you're gonna see a little bit of teary eyes. Okay, enjoy. Branching off of number 1, the second mistake that endurance athletes tend to make that may lead to overtraining syndrome is racing too much. You may be shocked to hear this, but it is possible to race too many times per year. Just because there are more races now than ever doesn't mean that your body all of a sudden found a physical capability loophole to do all of them. I did a little bit of research on this and I was shocked to find that 12 years ago, there were 160 ultramarathons listed globally. 12 years later, there are 1,800, which is about 1,000% growth. Why is this the case? Well, of course, there's more interest, there's more people participating, but also it's a business. That's a huge amount of growth. It also means that there's probably a race that you can jump into every single weekend. This is great if you have to have a very flexible schedule, depending on, let's say, your work or your life, your family, but it's also awful if you think that just because a race is going on that you've got to jump into it. I I urge you to go back and look at endurance legends like Ann Trayson. By the way, if you don't know who Ann Trayson is, like, please turn this video off right now and do some Googling. Not knowing who Ann Trayson is and being an ultramarathoner is like being a golfer and like not knowing who Tiger Woods is, minus the scandal. Okay, moving on. Those legends, especially in ultramarathon, they didn't race every weekend. I am embarrassed to admit the number of hours that I spent on ultrasignup.com looking for races to do, trying to see if I could add another one, seeing what was coming up next. It was all about me trying to scratch an itch, and it was ultimately one of the things that led me down a wrong path. Do not jump into a race to overcome boredom. I did so much of that. Do not jump into a race because you're accompanying a friend. Last minute, maybe they ask you to pace them. Like, pacing miles are still miles. You have to think of that. Do not sign up to a race to justify a special meal. I'm looking at you, holiday races. Do not jump into a race because you had a really stressful week and need to do something to make yourself feel better. And do not jump into a race just because you're going on a business trip that you know is going to be boring, and so you want to use the time up, so you decide to do a midnight marathon and you race through the night in the fog in San Francisco and don't finish until 3 a.m. Yeah, don't do that. That was an oddly specific example. Interesting. Stress and boredom are not good reasons to jump into a race. You're going to be wasting money. You don't need another t-shirt. Those miles count. Think about it. The third mistake that endurance athletes tend to make that may lead them down a path of overtraining is using endurance sports for weight loss. I do not have personal experience with this. I did not get into sports to lose weight, but it is a very slippery slope that I see people go down all the time. I get this one. You start training and it doesn't take too long to figure out that you can lose a few pounds by doing a little bit of extra training. This makes people feel good, especially when they realize that they can eat kind of whatever they want, and these pounds at the beginning seem to magically fall off. The problem is this, it's a problem of math. In order to lose weight, you have to be in a calorie deficit. But in order to be able to sustain long distance, difficult training, lots of volume, you need calories to keep that going. It's easy to see that this is not going to work after a while. People start entering into this, you've heard me talk about before, a transactional relationship between food and training. People will start training way beyond what's necessary just to justify their caloric intake. You will compromise your health and or your performance long term if you continue with this transactional relationship. You have to be prepared to fuel your body, and there's really no way around that. I could talk about this topic for a long time, but I'm just gonna leave it here for now and move on to number 4. Ooh, number 4, I did this one. The number 4 mistake that endurance athletes make is getting lost in magical thinking. I wanna tell you a story. In 1999, I was living in Guadalajara, Mexico. I was down there getting a master's degree. This was the time when I was also diagnosed with celiac disease. I was laying in bed most of the time, feeling miserable. Internet, yes, we had internet back then, was primitive. However, I was reading Runner's World website when it wasn't complete trash. Sorry guys, but it is. And there was an article about someone named Scott Jurek. Now, if you don't know who Scott Jurek is, this is another place where you need to pause the video and go do the Google thing. My head started spinning, and I was researching every single thing I could find out about ultramarathon, ultra runners. What was this thing? I really wanted to do it. I wanted to know everything about it. I read these stories about people like Scott and also Dean Karnazes about how they were able to kind of like run into the night and work out their problems and their pain and their struggles, and their bodies just kept them going. And I know that this is their real story, and this is how they framed their romance with ultra running. I began to feel equally romantic toward ultra running. I bought a hook, line, and sinker. I wanted to get on a road somewhere and like Forrest Gump across the country. I imagined adventure, and I imagined beautiful vistas, and I imagined just being able to do this forever. And while this is a beautiful, beautiful concept, and it is one that was incredibly motivating to me, and maybe to you too, the real world is not a movie. It's not this romantic thought of magical running till the end of time. There are limits that we have to abide by. We have to eat, we have to sleep, we have to drink water, and there's a whole bunch of other things too. It is one of the things that made me run and run beyond what my body was physically capable of, because I just believed that there was this magic out there that my endurance would be able to supersede. So let's get real. Don't make that mistake. Okay, finally, the worst one. And I saved this one for last because I don't want to get emotional. Okay, the Biggest mistake, I think, the worst mistake that I see people make and that I definitely made myself, that totally did lead to overtraining syndrome for me, or was one of the factors, one of the contributing factors. Look at me, I'm talking too much because I don't want to talk about it. One of the biggest mistakes you can make is confusing your sport with your value. I know you don't want to hear this. I know you want to turn the video off right now, but just hang on. I know that you think that your sport is your value. I used to say, I'm not gonna cry. I used to say that running was the best thing about me. It gives you a sense of accomplishment. It adds structure to your days. It is the yes when everything else feels like a no. But hear me out. I had to realize, and I want you to realize, that we are enough whether or not we ever run another step ever again. Your sport is great and it has benefits, and I would not trade my accomplishments in ultramarathon or triathlon or anything, any sport that I've ever done. I would not trade those accomplishments for anything. But I had to realize that my value does not originate or finish with my running shoes on. It doesn't grow with every race and shrink with every rest day. We have value just being on the earth. It has nothing to do with our sport. I wish that I was able to give myself a little bit of a break back then and let myself know that there was so much more to me than that I had so much more to give, and that people who were close to me and who loved me did not love me because of how well I performed in a race or how many miles I ran that week. It would have not been so scary to have to stop running if I had known that, if I had actually believed that. And I'm not gonna lie, it was a lot of work for me to figure out what else I liked about myself and what else I felt like I had to offer when running went away. It took me a long time to recognize and be comfortable with my worth. That was something I had to learn too. It's not enough to recognize it, you have to really be comfortable with it. But eventually I was able to let new things in and grow as a person, and I'm here with you. I never would have been here doing this. I never would have been going back to school. I never would have done so many of the great things, wonderful things that have really, really filled up my life if I wasn't able to finally have that conversation with myself about what my value really is. I'm not saying that you have to stop running to figure out your value. I'm saying figure it out now so that you know that you're more than your sport. Woo, today was one of those days. I truly believe that by avoiding a bunch of these things, you are going to have a much healthier relationship with your sport. I am really interested to hear what you think about some of these mistakes. Remember that you can schedule a counseling call with me at acaseofthejills.com. Please give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and consider subscribing to A Case of the Jills. I hope that you have an amazing day wherever you are. I hope you know how special you are. Thank you for watching. I'll see you again soon.